10. Hi guys, General Splatton here. Today I want to do a review of Liquitex Glazing Medium. Uh, this is a acrylic additive that is basically useful in any kind of acrylic paint. What I'm talking about here today, and I'll be using these for artists out there that's going to be watching this. Formula P3 paints. These are miniature paints. These are liquid paints for painting miniatures and figures and models. But if you are a person that is painting on canvas, painting on different mediums of that nature, I hope you'll stick around because I think you'll find the information informative as well. On the side it tells you it increases the flow and leveling, dries quickly, fast layering. It's a gloss finish. Large quantities may temporarily lighten colors until dry, and it's permanent and non-yellowing when dry. Mix with any acrylic color. Do not mix with oils. Always test first for best results. And then it says creates clear, brilliant glazes. Adds transparency. Now the characteristics of the product itself, it is classed with as a paint or a paint product because it's not prep and it's not any kind of finish to protect what's underneath. It is fluid material. It comes out slightly opaque, a slight pearlescent or white tint to it. This goes away as it dries, but it is a thicker fluid, but it's not something like a gel or whatnot. Has a gloss finish and it's transparent when it dries. So as it dries, it loses that opaqueness. Now, I've got these three colors out, and I've done this before, but it was way too long, so I'm going to go back and redo this. If you have, and I'm showing this for artists who may be interested, if you have, like a medium body or a heavy body paint, tube paint, and here it is. See, it's got a whiteness to it, but as it dries, that goes away. If you add this, and I'm going to turn this around here to the side where I didn't use it. If you add this to a heavier body acrylic, since it is a liquid, it's going to change the viscosity of that paint and make it certainly have greater flow characteristics. In other words, it's going to thin it and it won't have that heavy body anymore, that medium body. It's going to bring it down. Ever how the scale goes. So be aware of that if you are an artist and never used this particular product, that it will have thinning qualities, in other words, for more heavy bodied or thicker acrylic paints. Okay, now let me show you this next. This is a P3 paint, and this is a green and red. I've already done this, but let's say you're adding, get some over here, you're adding to make a glaze, and you want to lay it on top of something where you're going to add water, obviously, so we'll put some water over here. Now, nice thing about this is that if you're using a paint that has known characteristics of poor separation, in other words, it separates a lot in the bottle, on the palette, on the miniature, wherever, when you're thinning it especially, then this particular product can really help you to combat some of that. So just take a little. I'm not giving you kind of ratios. You just need to experiment. That way you'll learn more about your products that you're using. You just put it in there. See how that kind of thickened back up, but it almost like it drew itself back together. That's the real benefit and property of the glazing medium, is that it's going to keep the characteristics of the paint but add other characteristics as well. So it really gives you an improvement, a bump to your paint itself. Also with the green, add some water, and I'm not even eyeballing, I'm just throwing some stuff out there to show you. But see how that became more cohesive again? I hope you picked up on that. But now, and you can thin this down some more. It's going to help protect the qualities of the paint. In other words, if they separate, or any paint's going to separate if you add enough to it, but just some are more prone to it than others. But you could add more and more water to this, and it's still going to keep those qualities. In other words, that paint is going to be able to perform for you even when it's very, very thin. And that's the main benefit of glazing medium. It keeps the performance of your paint intact the thinner it gets, or as it is thinned. In other words, even that product will fail if you use way too much water. And that's just a learning process of putting it down and looking at it together. Now, let's talk about the uses. Making glazes, since it is a glazing medium, you're working with very thin, basically layers of paint. You've got them very thinned out, and if you've only been using water, you might have struggled to make an effective glaze. It might have been chalky, it might have separated on you, it might have been, you got the effects where it was thick in some parts and thin in others. Well, the glazing medium will help you do that. It binds the paint together so it stays together even when it's thinned, and that way you can make a smooth layer as you're doing glaze. It adds to the flow characteristics, so it's going to be able to break that surface tension and flow over your model much more easily. Now, another thing you might not have thought of is making washes. Well, a wash is going to be thin as well. A wash is there to change the appearance of the paint underneath. In other words, you're adding shadow, you're adding depth and dimension to a miniature. Well, the glaze can do the same thing. It's going to add flow characteristics, so it's going to get break the surface tension, so it's going to get down to where it needs to. But also, it's going to help it dry more uniformly, and certainly it's going to keep those paint characteristics together to be able to add that shading and that shadowing to your model as well. Now, here's something you might not have thought of. What if you're just doing regular painting, and maybe you're just adding base coats? You can still use this. You know, everybody says, and it is true, I totally agree, that thinner coats built up over time is better than one lumpy, chunky, thick coat. To give you smoother qualities and smoother results. Remember what it said at the top. It said it increases flow and helps with leveling. So you can use this on base coats. What have I really told you is practically every time you put a brush in paint and put it toward your miniature, you can be using this glazing medium, whether it's very, very thin applications such as glazes or washes, or even a thicker application of a base coat. It will help your paint properties achieve the desired results with less fussing and less fighting with your paints. So that's the real benefit of glazing medium. You can use this practically every time you're painting, in other words, and it will help you be just another tool, and that's what we're talking about. It's a tool for you, help you in your painting. All right, it helps. Let's talk about helps. It helps the paint stay together, so it won't separate as much from their binders and their mediums to keep them together. It increases transparency of the paint. In other words, it's going to lay over those other paints and help show those underneath layers. Also, here's something you might not have thought of. Let's say you've got a matte paint, such as one of the Andrea colors. They're very flat matte paint. Well, let's say you don't have that particular tone and you want to use it, or that particular shade, and you want to use it on the model, but you want it to be more of a gloss finish. You can take the glazing medium, add it to that matte paint, and it's not going to make it a gloss paint now, but it will certainly add more of a gloss effect to that paint than just using it straight from the bottle or the tube. In other words, it's going to add some glossiness to that paint, so you can still use it and get better results. So it's something to keep in mind that you might not have thought of. And it can help with blending. Since it thins the paint, it increases the transparency, then you're going to get more effective blends by using it. Keeping everything exactly the same, you will have better blends because of the because of the characteristics that the glazing medium adds to your paint. Some things to watch out for. It may alter the color of your paint, Depending on how much you use, it's going to slightly lighten it if it's going to do anything. So you need to be aware of that. You'll just have to experiment and play around with it and learn the characteristics to know what it's going to do with your paints. So that's the second point. It may require getting used to, depending on how much you're adding to the paint. The great thing about this is it will be a thinning agent, so as you're putting on base coats or anything like that, it will help to thin your paints, especially when used with a little drop of water. So if you have one of the, or you use, a more fuller, heavier bodied acrylic paint, this is going to thin it, and you need to be aware of that. And so that's basically it, folks. It's a great product that you can use every time you paint, basically. And it will help improve your painting by the characteristic it adds to the paint that you're using. So that's it for the review. If you have any questions, folks, let me know. I highly recommend this, and I'm sure there are other glazing mediums out there from other brands that will do just as well. But this is the one I have. This is the one I like. But I'm sure I could get other results with other mediums. It's a great product, can really help people paint figures, miniatures, and help with other things as well. So if you have any questions and want to shoot me a PM, I'll be happy to entertain those. This is General Splatton. I'll talk again. Dismissed.